Welcome back to One Recap. Today, we'll be diving into the action thriller film franchise, John Wick, which includes Chapter 1, 2, 3, and 4. Enjoy the recap. The movie kicks off with John Wick crashing his car into a wall. He emerges from the wreckage, bloodied and injured. He applies pressure to a wound in his stomach and watches a video of his late wife, Helen, on the beach before collapsing to the ground. A few days earlier, on a cloudy day, John wakes up and starts remembering his times with Helen. He thinks about a dinner they had together and the sad moment when she fell into his arms. Then, we see him at the hospital with Helen, kissing her forehead before the doctor leaves. John, heartbroken, is holding his wife's necklace. We then learn that Helen was sick with a disease that ended up taking her life. John jumps into his car and goes to attend the funeral. After some time, everyone has left the grave, but John is the only one left standing. A man watches him from a distance, and after the service, an old friend named Marcus approaches him and offers his condolences, checking in on him as a good friend would. The two engage in a brief conversation before Marcus bids him farewell. After the funeral, John goes back home and starts tidying up. He hears the doorbell ring and finds a delivery lady with a package. She gives him the box, which has a little beagle inside. When he opens it, he finds a note from his late wife, Helen. In the note, she says she's accepted her destiny and wants John to find happiness and love again, starting with this puppy. John gets very emotional reading the letter and begins crying. He takes the puppy from the box and sees the collar decorated with flowers, which makes him think that Helen named the dog Daisy. Later, he gently picks up the puppy from his bed and gently places her on the floor. On the following day, John is awakened by the dog climbing onto his bed and follows him everywhere around the house. He pours cornflakes for the dog and himself and decides to buy proper food for the puppy. He takes her cruising in his vintage 1969 Ford Mustang Mach 1. During a pit stop for gas, John is approached by Joseph Tarasov and two other mobsters. Joseph admires John's car and inquires about its price, to which John responds that it's not for sale. Joseph insults him in Russian, saying everything has a price. John then says, "Not this one," in fluent Russian, enraging Joseph until one of his companions restrains him, leaving John to drive away carefree. Later in the day, John heads to an abandoned construction site and begins driving his car recklessly, drifting to release his frustration. He goes round and round, narrowly avoiding hitting some trucks before eventually stopping. Later on, he jumps into bed and sleeps. During the night, Daisy needs to go outside to relieve herself, so he takes her downstairs. Two shadowy figures then confront him, and a third person hits him over the head with a bat. As John lies on the ground, the men attack Daisy, and one of them kills her. They demand John's car keys, and after finding them, the man who whacked him takes off his mask, revealing himself to be Joseph. He swears at John and knocks him out cold. After waking up, John finds his lifeless pet and lays beside it. He then proceeds to bury the dog and cleans up the mess in his home, as memories of his wife and the brutal attack from the previous night continue to haunt him. Meanwhile, Joseph drives John's Mustang to Aurelio's store, where he demands clean papers and a new number. The car, however, Aurelio recognizes the vehicle and demands to know where Joseph got it from. He brags about stealing the car, and Aurelio orders him to leave the shop immediately. But Joseph responds with arrogance, claiming that they own him. Aurelio shuts him up, stating that he works with his father and whacks him. One of the henchmen pulls out a gun, but the other stops him from shooting. Joseph then insults Aurelio and threatens to take his business elsewhere. Later, John stops by the shop and inquires about the car. Aurelio replies that the car was here and that Joseph is Vigo's son. Later on, Vigo calls Aurelio and asks exactly why he struck his son. Aurelio just replies, "'Cause he stole John Wick's car, sir, and killed his dog." In response, Vigo just says, "Oh." Vigo seems worried and goes to his penthouse and tells his henchman that he wants to see his son. In the meantime, John enters his basement with a sledgehammer and begins smashing the floor open. It is revealed to be an arsenal of weapons and gold coins. To resolve the issue, Vigo visits Joseph at his residence. Initially, he compliments him on his stylish jacket, but then he punches him in the stomach to tell him that he messed up. Despite his henchman's request to leave, Vigo insists he stays. He then informs Joseph that John Wick, formerly known as Baba Yaga or the Boogeyman, used to be associated with him until he retired to marry Helen. Vigo recounts an incident where he witnessed John kill 3 men in a bar using only a pencil. He then reveals that when John decided to retire, he was assigned an impossible task that involved executing several high-profile assassinations within a short period. To everyone's surprise, John's somehow instrumental in establishing the Tarasov Empire. Joseph declares that he can handle the situation and complete the task, but Vigo warns him that John will come for him, and he cannot escape his fate. Vigo then attempts to make amends by calling John, but he hangs up, indicating that they are in some big trouble. That night, John gets locked and loaded, knowing that 𝐔𝐄 has dispatched a squad of assassins to his house. However, they quickly realize their mistake of taking on the boogeyman face to face. John swiftly neutralizes each and every opponent without hesitation or difficulty. He engages in fierce combat with a few assailants before dealing a fatal blow to one of them. It turns out 𝐔𝐄 sent 12 assassins, but that is no problem at all as John blasts his way through each one of them. After the combat has finished, a police officer arrives at the front door and knocks. John recognizes the officer by name and asks if there has been a noise complaint. The officer confirms and inquires if John has returned back to the game, alluding to the lifeless body visible behind him. John says he's just cleaning up, and the officer simply walks away. To handle the aftermath and dispose of the deceased, John contacts an underworld cleanup crew. It's apparent that they understand this won't be their last time helping him. Meanwhile, 𝐔𝐄 approaches John's acquaintance Marcus and offers him a lucrative $2 million contract to assassinate John. 𝐔𝐄 also instructs his assistant, 𝐓𝐇, to advertise the job opening to other interested parties. Marcus gladly accepts the offer. John decides to make his way to the New York Continental Hotel, which exclusively caters to the criminal underworld. All Continental hotels strictly prohibit any assassinations on its premises. Among the familiar faces, John recognizes Perkins and Sharon. He greets his friend and books a room with the currency the assassins use. We are then introduced to the hotel's manager, Winston. When John inquires about Yosef's whereabouts, Winston informs him that Yosef can be found at a nightclub called Red Circle. John immediately makes his way to the club, where Joseph and his friends are enjoying themselves. He then bumps into an old acquaintance of his and suggests that the man take the day off, which he gracefully accepts. Inside the club, Joseph is hanging out in the bathhouse. Suddenly, John appears on the club's lower level, killing one of Joseph's associates. Upon spotting John, Joseph flees for his life. John begins shooting at the remaining hitmen, and even though he manages to take out all of his targets, Joseph seems to have made a lucky escape. Joseph then calls his man Victor, only to hear the boogeyman on the other side taunting him. John eventually returns to the Continental Hotel and tells Sharon he needs a medic in his room. As the medic takes care of the injury to his stomach, the doc warns him that he needs to take it easy to avoid tearing his sutures. John, however, doesn't understand the meaning of easy. Later that night, Marcus ascends to the rooftop of a building across the street and sets up his sniper rifle. He spots John, who is sleeping, but he also observes someone entering through the mirror and fires a warning shot at John. Perkins then starts shooting at him, but he narrowly dodges her attacks. It turns out 𝐔𝐄 is offering $4 million to break the Continental's rules and kill John. He engages in a struggle with Perkins and eventually puts her in a headlock, proposing that he would show her mercy in exchange for useful intel. Perkins discloses that 𝐔𝐄 keeps most of his riches in a church basement and says the location. He renders her unconscious and immediately leaves her with Harry in exchange for a gold coin. Unbeknownst to Harry, Perkins has dislocated her thumb and is slipping away. She manages to escape and beats him in a fight, to which she puts a pillow on his head and shoots through it. John then visits 𝐔𝐄's hidden stockpile of goodies inside the chapel. He takes out a gun, shoots the priest, and proceeds to kill every man that challenges him. He compels the priest to lead him to the vault or die. He is then taken to the vault room and unlocks the gate. John dismisses the ladies in the vault and sets fire to the entire structure, causing 𝐔𝐄 to lose his fortune. He goes outside to camp on top of a building next to the chapel. He spots 𝐔𝐄 and his main crew enter the premises. A firefight ensues with John going toe-to-toe with 𝐔𝐄's men. He manages to take out most of them until one assailant jumps into an SUV. As John reloads and takes out one more enemy, he is clobbered and lands on the ground. 𝐔𝐄 takes advantage of this opportunity to apprehend John. Upon waking up, 𝐔𝐄 questions why he is seeking vengeance over a car and a dog. John reveals that Joseph stole the life of his dog, which was a gift from his late wife, and warns 𝐔𝐄 that he can either hand over Joseph or die with him. But 𝐔𝐄 leaves him to his thugs, who begin to kill him. Luckily, Marcus shoots one of the hitmen, giving John an opening to take out the other. John then runs out into the street, and with 𝐔𝐄's escape vehicle in sight, he takes out the driver. He then aims his gun at 𝐔𝐄, who is then forced to reveal that Joseph is hiding at a safe house hidden in a Brooklyn safe house. John then decides to leave. At the safe house, we see Joseph inside a room playing video games with one of his mercenaries. The area surrounding him is covered by multiple teams and multiple snipers. As they all check in, we see that John also checks in. He takes the unconscious man's sniper rifle and begins firing at will with deadly precision. Joseph takes off, and simultaneously, his getaway vehicles erupt in flames. He takes off running, but John finally catches up to him and shoots him in the stomach and then in his head without any hesitation. After John's revenge has been satisfied, he thanks Marcus for helping him out. But little do they know, Perkins discovers the two of them communicating. She reports her findings to Vigo, and in response, he orders his henchmen to trap Marcus inside his house. The scene then cuts to Vigo calling John and elaborating that Marcus was subdued for failing to complete his job. As they attack him and are about to finish him, he puts up a last stand and takes out a few men but is fatally shot by Perkins. Vigo then heads to a helicopter that will transport him out of the city. The plan is for John to come to Marcus's house where Perkins will ambush him, but she is summoned to a meeting with Winston, the proprietor of the Continental Hotel. They meet up, and Winston informs her that she has violated the Continental's rules, resulting in the revocation of her membership as well as her life. Upon discovering Marcus's lifeless body, John sets out on a mission to absolutely kill Vigo and everything that he stands for. He punches his car and spots Vigo and his men en route to their helicopter. He tries to ram his car into them. Vigo orders Abby to take out John, but John's vehicle collides with one SUV, making it swerve and go overboard. As they play bumper cars with each other, John pulls an amazing move, which manages to crash Vigo's car into a pole. The Russians then start pouring out of the SUV and shoot at John, but he instinctively uses his car as a shield and battering ram, fending off all of his assailants. Abby personally gets out of the car and tries to do something, but he too gets killed. Vigo then suddenly rams his SUV into John's car, but John manages to escape before the car goes overboard. With both vehicles out of the picture, the two have a proper Western standoff and drop their guns. It's time to get dirty, and they both engage in fierce, rain-soaked hand-to-hand combat. It's quite an even match until Vigo pulls out a knife, but John uses the blade to his advantage, allowing it to hit him. He then uses his stomach to leverage and break Vigo's arm. He then plunges the knife into Vigo's chest. They sit for about 1 minute as Vigo cannot believe John did all of this for a dog. John then walks off, leaving him to die. The scene then cuts back to the beginning, with John still bleeding out but determined to keep going. After seeing the video of Helen, he stops at a dog shelter to tend to his wound. He also ends up adopting a pit bull before heading home. The movie begins with the roar of a motorcycle engine echoing through the city streets. A man on a motorcycle speeds through the dark and rainy night, clearly in a hurry. Suddenly, a car appears, chasing the motorcycle at high speed. The chase then intensifies, with both vehicles dodging other cars and narrowly avoiding collisions. As the chase continues, the motorcycle rider loses control and crashes. Soon the car comes to a stop, and the driver steps out. He walks over and retrieves a key from him. The scene then shifts to the shop belongs to Abram Tarasov, the sibling of late Vigo Tarasov. Hearing the John approach, Abram wastes no time in packing up his operations. Inside the shop, Abram is talking to one of his henchmen who was confident enough to take out John Wick all by himself. He inquires Abram, is it necessary to put everything on the line for a just mere car? But Abram reminds him this isn't just any car, it's John Wick's cars. The man who killed his nephew and decimated his brother. All because of his car and puppy. Abram recalls the stories about John, the man who once eradicated 3 men with nothing but a pencil. He describes John as a man of focus, dedication, and sheer determination. Soon John's calls and interrupts the conversation, demanding the return of his stolen car. Abram tries to negotiate, but John disconnects the call. In the meantime, John manages to find his car. He gets in and starts the engine and the Mustang roars to life. John tries to flee the scene in his car. Despite the chaos and potential obstacles, he successfully begins to drive away. John is then pursued by men working for Abram. Next, John's car is hit by one of his attackers, and one more assailant joins the fray. Such collision likely causes significant damage to the vehicle. Despite the heavy damage, John manages to restart the car, and tries to make another attempt to escape. Suddenly a biker joins the chase and shoots at him, adding another layer of danger. In a desperate move, John sacrifices his car door to stop the pursuing biker. John have enough about people ramming his car. In a desperation, John then rams his car into the enemy's vehicle. This aggressive maneuver successfully kills the men working for Abram. Suddenly, John is knocked out of his vehicle, dazed but not defeated. He quickly gets up and engages in hand-to-hand combat with Abram's men. John's fighting style is brutal and efficient, taking down his attackers with precision. After defeating Abram's men, John confronts Abram directly and tries to make peace by offering a truce. John, after a moment of consideration, accepts the truce, as continuing this will only leads to bloodshed. With the agreement made, John leaves the chop shop with his damaged car. John then gathers his weapons and other belongings and locks them away in the basement. This action shows his determination to leave his past life behind. However, throughout the process, John is driven by the memory of his deceased wife, Helen. A few days later, John's friend Aurelio pays him a visit. He inspects the Mustang, noting the dents, scratches, and broken parts. Aurelio agrees to repair the car, not before telling him that it will take some time to restore it to its former glory. In an unexpected turn of events, John's doorbell rang. It's Santino D'Antonio, a powerful figure in the criminal underworld, arrives at John's home. Surprised and visibly annoyed by Santino's unexpected appearance, John, recognizing the trouble it signifies. Meanwhile, Santino presents a ceremonial medallion, the blood oath marker. Explains that John made a blood oath to him when he sought help to complete an impossible task that allowed him to retire and live a peaceful life with his wife, Helen. Santino now calls in this marker and wants John to fulfill the oath and complete the task asked by him. John, on the other hand, determined to stay retired and honor his wife's memory, refuses Santino's demand. He explains that he has left his old life behind and does not wish to return. Santino doesn't take this refusal lightly. Enraged by John's refusal, Santino launches a barrage of grenades into his home, causing a series of explosions that quickly engulf the house in flames. Against all odds, John and his dog manages to survive the brutal attack to his house. John just stands there and watches helplessly, shattering of John's attempt to build a peaceful life. With no home left, John and his companion K9 turns to Continental Hotel, demanding Sheeran to meet with the Manger. Next, John meets with Winston, the manager of the hotel, seeking guidance. Winston reminds John of the unbreakable rules of their world. First, no killing on Continental Hotel grounds, and second, the blood oath marker. Once an oath is given on the marker, the person have to repay it even if it's cost his life. He explains that Santino's father is a member of the High Table. A council consists of 12 powerful crime lords who controls all the Continental hotels worldwide. Understanding the gravity of his situation, John reluctantly agrees to fulfill the Santino's demand. Soon, John pays a visit to Santino D'Antonio's luxurious mansion. Not wasting any time, Santino informs John that the target is his sister, Gianna D'Antonio. Gianna is about to become a member of the High Table after his father. Her death would allow Santino to claim her seat and consolidate his power within the organization. Hesitant but bound by his commitment, John accepts the mission. Before heading to Rome, John heads to his storage unit to gather his weapons and resources and essential belongings, preparing himself for the challenges to come. Next, after John's arrival at Rome, he takes a taxi to Continental Hotel branch of Rome, a luxurious place where he can stay hidden and plan his mission. Once settled in his hotel, John meets an old friend, Julius, who runs the Continental Hotel in Rome. Julius is an important ally. They talk about the risks and danger involved in the mission, but has confidence in John's abilities. After which, Julius provides John with the information and resources. Preparing for his mission, John then visits a hidden armory run by the sommelier, who assists John for choose the perfect weapons. John picks out a variety of firearms and knives, making sure he is fully prepared for any situation. Next, John visits his tailor, a man known for making stylish but bulletproof suits solely for assassins. These suits are special, which are bulletproof and designed to protect assassins during their missions. John visits another contact, a man who provides him with maps, keys, and the blueprints of the mansion. With all the details in hand, John then memorizes each and every detail carefully. As night falls, John, fully geared up, prepares for the battle that lies ahead. He manages to infiltrate Gianna D'Antonio's grand coronation celebration without detection of any adversaries, and confronts her in a private moment. Aware of her fate, Gianna chooses to take her own life by slicing her wrists rather than face dishonor. John ensures her death by shooting her head with a heavy heart, thus fulfilling the marker. With his mission complete, John Wick calmly walks away from party to make his exit. Unknown to him, Cashin, Gianna's skilled bodyguard, observes John's departure with suspicion, immediately recognizing his intent to eliminate Gianna. In an instant, both draws their weapon and gunfire erupts. Soon John springs into action, darting through a bustling concert hall, gunfire echoing in chaotic bursts as he evades and retaliates against his attackers. Breaking away from the concert, he confronts additional adversaries undeterred, swiftly eliminating 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 men before he departs. His path then twists through the city's subterranean catacombs, where he encounters Ares, Santino's fiercely loyal bodyguard. Unexpectedly, a double crossing with dangerous ambush unfolds, but John's armored suit provides critical protection, enabling him to deflect attacks and incapacitate several assailants. Leveraging the twisting catacombs to his advantage, he systematically isolates and eliminates remaining enemies, showcasing his exceptional combat skills and lethal precision. In a relentless spree, John eliminates 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 in a matter of seconds. Escaping from the catacombs, John is suddenly struck by a speeding car. From the vehicle emerges Cashin, who immediately opens fire. Engaging in a high-stakes hand-to-hand duel, both men exhibit formidable prowess and resilience, exchanging powerful blows and tactics. Their intense battle comes to an abrupt halt as they land in the lobby of the Continental Hotel. due to hotel's strict rule of no business on the premises forces them to stop fighting. Next, John and Cashin find themselves drinking in hotel premises. There, John reveals the motives driving his actions, yet even upon learning Santino's fault, Cashin vows to kill John out of professional respect and loyalty to Gianna. After returning to his room, John is caught off guard by a call from Santino. Santino, the one who requested the assassination in the first place, now betrays John over the phone, after which Santino announces a $7 million bounty on John's head, disguising his movie as an act of revenge on his sister. The next morning, John gets ready to check out of the Continental Hotel room and ensuring his return journey to the New York City. Soon the announcement of the $7 million bounty quickly spreads through the underground and it catches the attention of high-profile assassins worldwide. Meanwhile, Winston, the manager of the Continental Hotel, seeks a meeting with Santino. The purpose of this meeting is to confirm that John has fulfilled his blood oath to Santino by assassinating Gianna, and no longer under any obligation. According to Santino, there's no need for that, assuming that John won't survive his return to New York. Winston warns Santino about the consequences of betraying a man like John Wick. Winston knows John's capabilities and understands that betraying such a formidable figure will have dire consequences. Despite the warning, Santino is confident in his decision, driven by his own ambitions and plans. As John arrives in New York, the hunt begins. In a crowded subway station, John is ambushed by a skilled assassin. Using his quick reflexes and combat training, John fights off the attacker, neutralizing the threat swiftly and efficiently. Not long after, John is confronted by another assassin in a public park. This time, the fight is more intense, with both combatants exchanging blows and gunfire. Despite the danger, John manages to outmaneuver his opponent, demonstrating his exceptional hand-to-hand combat skills. As John continues to make his way through the city, he is attacked by a duo of assassins in a narrow alley. Using the confined space to his advantage, John skillfully takes down both attackers with a combination of shooting and pierce them with a pencil at close-quarters combat techniques. Next, John navigates through the streets of New York. He runs into Cashin once again. Their eyes lock, and without a word, a silent gunfire between them takes place. Both men are highly trained, making the fight evenly matched and intense in the middle of the crowd. They use silencers and their surroundings to gain an advantage. The scene eventually transitions into a close-quarters combat. Using knives and hand-to-hand techniques, both men demonstrate their exceptional skills and determination. In the climax of the fight, John manages to gain the upper hand. He disarms Cashin and stabs him in the chest. John leaves the knife embedded in Cashin's chest, ensuring that he is incapacitated but not immediately killed. Struggling to keep up, John spots a beggar and he offers a gold coin for assistance. With the beggar's help, he managed to extract himself from the dangerous situation. Not before the beggar killing the stalkers, John regains consciousness in the unknown surrounding, but his injuries are treated, and he recuperates from the intense battles he has faced. All under the care of the Bowery King, a powerful figure within the criminal underworld. Beyond just medical aid, John requests the Bowery for help to locate Santino and obtain ammunition to eliminate him. In the curiosity, Bowery King asked why he will be helping him out. John explains that if Santino rises to power unchecked, you will lose your own influence, power, control and resources all over the city. Moved by John's argument and understanding the threat posed by Santino, agrees to assist him. He provides John with a gun and 7 bullets, one each, for $1 million bounty on his head. With the location of Santino, which is utilizing all 7 of his bullets, John quickly disarms one of his adversary and his guards. The environment is tense. People surrounding them steps aside, with both sides ready for the inevitable confrontation. Utilizing all 7 of his bullets, John quickly disarms one of his adversary. With a new weapon in hand, John resumes his pursuit of Santino. The chase takes them through various parts of the museum. John engages in intense gunfire and hand-to-hand combat with more of Santino's guards. He moves swiftly, taking down each adversary that stands in his way. John then enters into a mirror maze within the museum. The room is filled with reflective surfaces, making it difficult to track movements. As John moves through the maze, the reflections make it hard to distinguish real threats from mere reflections, adding to the difficulty. Santino's loyal bodyguard arrives with additional henchmen. The presence of more enemies adds to the challenge, as John has to deal with multiple threats coming from different directions. Despite this, John uses the maze to his advantage, eliminating the henchmen one by one. His precise shooting and close-quarters combat skills are on full display as he efficiently takes down each attacker at a time. After eliminating the last henchman, he follows Santino. Eventually, John comes face to face with Ares in the mirror maze. The two lock eyes, ready for a final showdown. Then a fierce and intense fight ensues between John and Ares. as both fighters trading blows and dodging attacks. The combat is brutal and relentless. Despite Ares' strength and skill, Jon delivers the final, decisive blow, and Ares falls lifeless to the ground. Jon's victory over Ares clears his path. During the fight, Santino manages to slip away. He knows that the only place where John Wick cannot touch him is the Hotel Continental. Santino seeks refuge there, confident of the hotel's unbreakable rules. Jon soon arrives at the hotel. He approaches Sharon and asks for Santino's whereabouts. Sharon directs Jon to the hotel lounge, where Santino is hiding. As Jon heads to the lounge, he encounters Winston. Winston reminds Jon of the hotel's strict rules. No business can be conducted on continental grounds. He warns Jon against taking any irrational actions, emphasizing the severe consequences of breaking these rules. Despite Winston's warnings, he finds Santino in the lounge, sitting smugly and believing he is safe. In cold blood, Jon shoots Santino dead in the hotel. This bold action sends shockwaves through the underworld, as Jon has violated one of the most sacred codes. After killing Santino at the Continental, Jon leaves and returns to his old house. The memories of his late wife, Helen, flood his mind. This moment serves as a reminder of why he left the assassin's life and the pain that brought him back into it. Next day, Jon with his dog is escorted by Chiron to meet Winston in the park. Winston meets with Jon. He informs Jon by killing Santino on continental grounds, Jon has made himself a target. Winston tells Jon that the bounty on his head is doubled and he will be declared excommunicado, which means all his resources and access to the underworld will be revoked. Winston gives Jon a 1-hour grace before the excommunicado status takes effect. This hour is a gesture of respect and friendship. He also hands Jon a marker. This could be a lifeline for Jon in the future. It signifies that even in his darkest hour, Jon has some hope and a potential ally. Suddenly everyone stops at the park and Jon vows to kill whoever comes his way. With the marker in hand and his faithful dog by his side, Jon leaves the park. As he walks away, Winston makes the call to announce Jon's excommunicado status. The order quickly takes effect. Soon messages are sent out to assassins worldwide, and cell phones start ringing everywhere. The bounty on Jon's head is announced. Realizing the immediate danger, Jon begins to run. As he runs, people on the streets start to notice him. Many of them are assassins or connected to the underworld, and they stare at him, aware of the price on his head. With his dog by his side, Jon runs quickly through the city, aware that he is being watched. The movie ends with Jon running for his life. John Wick and his dog dashes through the busy streets of New York City on a desperate night. Jon, injured and with only an hour left before being declared excommunicado, in an alley Jon encounters the TikTok man, a spy for the Bowery King. With limited time left, he then hops into a taxi, but traffic delays him. With merely 20 minutes remaining, Jon decides to continue his journey on foot. Before leaving the taxi, he hands the driver a gold coin to ensure his dog is safely delivered to the Continental Hotel. Showcasing his trust in the hotel's sanctuary, John Wick visits a public library, demanding for a specific type of book. Discovering a secret compartment within a book that holds personal items like coins, a marker, and a photo of his late wife, which he reverently kisses. His solitude is interrupted by Ernest, a formidable adversary who confronts. However, despite Jon's claim that his grace period hasn't expired, a brutal fight ensues, Jon taking advantage his small surrounding. He then uses the book itself as a weapon to break Ernest's jaw and ultimately defeat him. However, the victory comes at a cost as Jon sustains a stab wound to his shoulder, marking the beginning of more challenges ahead. With merely 5 minutes left before his excommunication takes effect, Jon visits the doctor at his home for medical help. Initially resisting, the doctor stitches Jon's wound but abruptly stops as the excommunication deadline hits. Jon completes the stitching himself and gets painkillers from the doctor. To convince the high table that he obeyed the excommunicado order, the doctor requests Jon to shoot him in non-lethal areas. Jon complies, shooting the doctor twice, wounding but not killing him. With his wounds somewhat treated and the doctor's assistance no longer available, Jon departs, preparing to face the imminent threats as the excommunication becomes active. As Jon leaves the doctor, without getting a moment of rest, he's immediately chased by various assassins. Seeking refuge, Jon ducks into an antique weapons shop. Inside, using his expertise, he quickly assembles a functional revolver from antique parts but only manages to fire one shot. As more attackers close in, Jon switches to using antique knives, engaging in a brutal and intense fight. He skillfully uses the shop's historical weapons to fend off and kill his assailants, displaying his lethal combat skills. Victorious but battered, he steps out into the streets only find himself pursued by yet more assassins. He lets them into a nearby stable, where he smartly uses horses and their lethal kicks to exterminate several of his assailants. Mounting a horse, Jon rides through the streets, continuing his escape. A thrilling chase ensues between Jon on horseback and bike-riding assassins. Despite their relentless pursuit, John skillfully dispatches the bikers while maintaining his horse's speed. This intense sequence showcases his agility and combat prowess. Following his survival, the bounty on John's head increases to $15 million, intensifying the global hunt for him. John then visits a theater with a crucifix he retrieved from the library. Before meeting the director, he is checked and disarmed. He then presents the crucifix, a symbol of a debt owed, to the director and pleads for her help. The director hesitates but agrees to assist John due to their shared history. She agrees to make arrangements for John's safe passage to Casablanca. Before that, John undergoes a ceremonial branding of the crucifix on his back to solidify their agreement and sever their ties. Simultaneously, a mysterious woman arrives at the Continental and presents a coin to Sharon, signaling her status. Winston is notified of the arrival of the adjudicator. After a while, upon inspecting Santino's body, the adjudicator confronts Winston, demanding his resignation for failing to uphold the Continental's no bloodshed rule against John Wick. Representing the High Table, she is tasked with punishing those who aided John. The adjudicator then visits the Bowery King, he dismissing his respect for John's excommunicado status and asserting the High Table's authority. She orders him to relinquish his position and leave town due to his support of John. Defiant, the Bowery King asserts his immovability, declaring himself as the throne that cannot be dethroned. Meanwhile, John then arrives in Casablanca, seeking help and refuge. However, he immediately encounters hostility when he is attacked by 3 assassins. He manages to kill one of them and confronts the second, but their fight is interrupted by another man who stops the assassin from attacking John. He declares that the hotel manager has granted John amnesty, not pleased by the development an assassin attempts to strike John but killed instead. The man then escorts John to the Casablanca branch of the Continental Hotel. Inside, John notices photographs of a woman and her daughter, piquing his curiosity. Suddenly, 2 aggressive dogs approach John, but from the shadows emerges the hotel manager, Sophia, who shoots at him. Fortunately, John's bulletproof suit saves him. John then presents a marker to Sophia, reminding her of the debt she owes him for rescuing her daughter. Sophia initially asks John not to invoke the marker, but John insists he only wants to meet his old boss. With visible reluctance, Sophia agrees to help John. Next, the adjudicator arrives at a small sushi shop to meet Zero, a formidable assassin. Zero recognizes the High Table's coin and understands the gravity of her visit. Aware of John Wick's predicament, Zero expresses eagerness to hunt him down. The adjudicator assigns Zero the mission to eliminate John Wick and anyone who assisted him. Back at the theater, the director watches her student's ballet performance, unaware that her guards are being slaughtered by ninjas. During the performance, 3 men invade the stage, followed by the adjudicator and Zero. The adjudicator accuses the director of aiding John Wick, violating the High Table's rules. To demonstrate her loyalty, the director agrees to a painful penance. Zero runs his blade through both of her hands, leaving her alive but in agony. Meanwhile, Sophia prepares for a confrontation by equipping herself and her dogs with weaponry. Despite John's assurance that he only wants to negotiate with her former boss, she remains doubtful. They visit Sophia's old boss, Barada. John asks Barada about the whereabouts of the Elder, who sits above the High Table. Barada explains that the Elder cannot be found unless he wishes to be found. He suggests John should travel into the desert toward the stars until he is on the brink of death, and then the Elder might reveal himself. He can only be found if he wishes to be found. After which, before John and Sophia leave, Barada demands a tribute, one of Sophia's dogs, which she refuses, and in anger, Barada shoots one of her dogs. To his surprise, the dog's bulletproof vest saves it. Enraged, Sophia shoots Barada, initiating a battle with his guards. One of Sophia's dogs leaps into action, attacking the enemies. After all the guards are eliminated, Sophia delivers another shot to Barada's leg. Sophia, her dogs, and John then make their exit, shooting down additional guards as they navigate their way out of the complex, killing more enemies assisted by Sophia's dogs. Their intense escape underscores the relentless and dangerous world they inhabit. John and Sophia travel to the edge of the desert. John signs the marker with his blood and returns it to Sophia, fulfilling her debt. Sophia, prioritizing her dogs, gives them most of the remaining water and swallows the last few drops before handing the empty bottle back to John. After that, each pursues their own path. With a limited water supply, John follows the instructions given to him and walks into the desert. He endures the harsh conditions, battling the blistering sun during the day and the chilling cold at night. Despite his determination, John eventually collapses from exhaustion and dehydration. Unconscious but not dead, John is found by the Elder's men in the desert. He regains his consciousness in a luxurious tent where he comes face to face to the Elder, saying that he never found a lost soul as John's. The Elder then confronts him about his reasons for wanting to live. John expresses his desire to continue living to remember his late wife Helen. The elder offers John a choice: perish in the desert or continue his life as a boogeyman by pledging to kill Winston. However, John cannot leave the underworld but would be able to reverse his excommunicado status by pledging loyalty to the High Table. John severs his ring finger and offers his wedding ring to the elder as a symbol of his commitment and loyalty. The elder's men Zahir prepare John with a new outfit for his return to New York with the task at hand. As John arrives in New York, he is confronted by two assassins but is saved by ninjas who kill them and bring him before Zero, a skilled assassin. As they move towards each other, tension rises but is interrupted by a line of students. John uses this distraction to escape, brutally killing two more ninjas and procuring a bike. Zero and his team give chase with high speed and sword attacks. Using his skills, John manages to kill many henchmen while maintaining his speed. The chase continues until they crash near the Continental Hotel. Due to hotel strict rules, Zero fails kill John once he touches the hotel ground. Sharon then escorts John inside, followed by Zero, who expresses admiration for John, suggesting they are alike, firmly denying. John is then reunited with his dog and instructs it to sit. John meets Winston in a special glass room designed to reveal any hidden weapons that enemy holds. Winston knows John has been sent to kill him and admits he'd prefer to be killed by a friend rather than an enemy. However, he presents John a choice: follow the order and remain the boogeyman, or defy the High Table and die as the man his wife, Helen, loved. The adjudicator arrives at the Continental and confronts Winston about stepping down, which he denies. She then inquires if John will carry out his mission to kill Winston, and he also refuses. Due to such refusal, the adjudicator make a call to declare the Continental deconsecrated, meaning violence like killing will now be allowed in the hotel. Now both John and Winston are open target. A group of elite forces of the High Table will be arriving soon. Due to upcoming danger, Winston reinstated John's privileges immediately. In the armory, John is briefed about the High Table's upgraded armor. As a result, John loads himself with a more caliber ammunition. As the battle nears, John is accompanied by Sharon, while Winston stays in his safe room with John's dog. As the first wave of High Table enforcers storms the Continental, John Wick and Sharon, along with some of the hotel staff, engage in fierce firefights with the attackers. As the battle intensifies, John realizes that the enforcer's body armor is highly resistant to bullets, which lead him to engage them at close quarter. Meanwhile, the adjudicator contacts Winston, questioning the longevity of his defense. Instead of replying, Winston ends the call prematurely. The initial wave of the High Table enforcers kills all the staff, leaving only John and Sharon standing. John does his best with the limited impact his bullets are having. Getting up close and personal, after firing underneath their helmets, he manages to take out a decent number of assailants. Both he and Sharon then regroup in the armory. Sharon then equips John with an armor-piercing shotgun capable of breaching the enemy's formidable defenses. When the second wave of attackers descends upon the Continental, John and Sharon both expertly dispatch them, their new shotguns ripping through the High Table's improved armor with ease. After eliminating several enemies with his pistol, John is immediately held at gunpoint by a henchman, only to saved by Zero. A chase ensues through the building, leading to a deadly duel in the glass room where John battles two nimble assassins, giving John a hard time and shattering glass everywhere. He ultimately defeats them using their own sword. As he takes the stairs, Zero poke him from behind the glass barrier. John is then ambushed by Zero's henchman, the shinobi, who plays with him. Despite being temporarily defeated, the shinobi help up and started to comment on his slowed reflexes and recent retirement, shaking off his initial defeat. John uses his belt as a weapon, engaging in a deadly third round of combat. As the fight takes on, John uses non-traditional tactics like ear slaps and elbow strikes, eventually slamming one of the shinobis so powerful that shatters the glass floor beneath them. Despite their efforts, the shinobi are unable to recover, and John rises and takes farewell, leaving them behind as he continues his search for Zero. He finds Zero upstairs, and the intense fight immediately breaks through into a fierce swords duel. The fight evenly matches for some time, but John uses Zero's own disappearing trick against him. John lands a fatal blow through Zero's chest with his own sword. Exhausted, both men sit together, as Zero bleeds out and mortally wounded, assuring his appreciation for the thrill of their fight, telling John that he will join him soon. John dismissively replies and leaves Zero behind. Zero, succumbing to his injuries, collapses and dies. Due to heavy resistance, the adjudicator contacts Winston and suggests a parley. Winston agrees, and they meet on the rooftop to negotiate. The adjudicator warns that the conflict is just beginning and asserts that the Continental will eventually fall. Winston, however, stands his ground, asserting his strong grip on New York City and his determination to reclaim the Continental. Despite the adjudicator's threats, Winston remains unyielding, confident in his position and influence over the city. John arrives on the rooftop where the adjudicator demands action against him. To show loyalty to the high table, Winston shoots John multiple times, causing him to fall off the roof. The adjudicator, thinking the problem is resolved, reconsecrates the Continental and starts to leave. However, her relief is short-lived as she notices that John's body has vanished from the alley where he fell. She informs Winston, and they both realize that John is still alive. Winston, equally alarmed by the situation, they cannot afford a vengeful John Wick. He quietly utters Baba Yaga, acknowledging John Wick's formidable reputation and the danger he now represents. In an alleyway, the TikTok man maneuvers a cart carrying John Wick's battered body. John is dumped in front of the Bowery King, who sits wounded on a throne. The Bowery King speaks to the barely conscious John about betrayal and the foolish rules of the high table. Anger coursing through him, the Bowery King reveals his desire for revenge and asks John if he shares his sentiment. With all his remaining strength, John manages to lift his head and say one word: "Yeah." The end. The movie kicks off in New York. With John Wick training rigorously, the Bowery King enters the scene and presents a new suit for John, not before asking him if he is ready. He replies with, "Yeah." The scene shifts to the desert, where John is chasing 3 horsemen. They are running for their lives as he storms a hail of bullets and takes down the first one. As the chase continues, the elder watches from a distance while John takes down the second horseman and finally the last one as well. After which, he stops, gets off his horse, and reloads as he walks toward the elder. The elder asks the reason for his visit, and John replies that he wants his ring and his freedom back. However, he doesn't have the ring and tells John, "The only peace you will have is in death, and no one can escape the high table." Annoyed, John doesn't like that answer and puts 2 bullets into his head. Going back to New York, at the Continental Hotel, a mysterious man walks in, known as the Harbinger. He hands an envelope to Sharon, demanding to speak with the manager. Sharon contacts Winston, informing him about the situation and escorts the man to the upper floor to meet with the manager. The Harbinger then reveals that the hotel has been condemned and provides an hourglass, giving him 1 hour to evacuate. He also says that the 12 members of the high table have signed the decree, granting Marquis the power to act as judge, jury, and executioner, after which, Winston and Sharon instantly make their way to have a meeting with the Marquis. Upon entering the room, they witness a similar hourglass on the table. We're then introduced to the Marquis as he says an amazing quote, "Second chances are the refuge of men who fail." Winston, justifying his loyalty, reveals he shot John Wick, to which the Marquis laughs, saying that John is still alive and polluting everything he touches. He goes on by saying that the Continental is being expelled from the filthy city of New York, and Sharon stresses the importance of everyone following the rules, even the high table. Ultimately, the Marquis blames Winston for John's actions, and as the last grains of sand fall, the Continental Hotel explodes. Winston is then declared excommunicado, and Marquis then aims his gun at him but shoots Sharon instead. On the floor, Chiron, taking his last breath, then dies while holding hands with Winston. Next, we're introduced to Cain, a blind man in Paris. He overhears a young girl playing music in a small crowd. Shortly after, he is summoned to a meeting with the Marquis, who wastes no time in getting to the point, saying that Cain almost breached the terms of his deal by getting too close to his daughter that day. Despite his retirement, the Marquis threatens to take Cain's daughter's life if he doesn't comply with his demand that he has to take a life. Cain is then given a card with the word Wick on it, which stops him as he reads. Cain reveals that he was a friend of John's, but he's willing to provide his services to the high table. We make our way to Japan, at another branch of the Hotel Continental. A tracker then makes his way to the hotel's reception desk. There, we meet the hotel's concierge, Akira, who allows the dog entry as an emotional support animal. She then walks with the manager, Shimazu, who is also her father. She reveals to him that everyone is anxious, as he's friends with John Wick, which could result in an unforeseeable future with the high table. However, Shimazu calms her down by saying not to worry, as they have done nothing wrong. As he departs and makes his way upstairs, he is met by John, who tells him that killing the elder was a mistake. He also informs him of Sharon's death, and John is not pleased. He warns him that the high table will not stop, and John says sorry to his dear friend for troubling him like this. Downstairs, the tracker looks at John Wick in his book, revealing he's also tailing John. As he quickly realizes, the concierge from the high table is in the hotel. They go to Akira, demanding for the manager. Surprised, she then tells them to get comfortable. Next, she rushes upstairs to her father and sees John Wick there, which angers her, but Shimazu says to stay with John as he handles the men downstairs. As he is on his way, he tells his men to get locked and loaded. They all go to arm themselves and are ready for war, if necessary. Next, Shimazu appears downstairs and greets the high table's concierge. The high table believes that the hotel is providing help to John Wick. The concierge demands full access to the hotel, and 𝐂𝐒𝐒 agrees on the condition they hand their guns over, as no business can be conducted on continental grounds. Simultaneously, Kane makes his way onto the scene and greets 𝐂𝐒𝐒 as an old friend, and they talk about brotherhood. But the concierge silences them by saying, "This hotel has been deconsecrated, so step aside." 𝐂𝐒𝐒 then turns the lights off, and they come back on very dimly as archers surround them. On 𝐂𝐒𝐒's command, they fire and kill a few men, and soon swords are taken out. They get into fierce combat as the hotel wins and aims their guns at the last man standing. However, to their surprise, a hit squad wearing complete bulletproof armor enters the building. Witnessing this, 𝐂𝐒𝐒 and his men retreat. The concierge then commands them to secure the hotel and find Mr. Wick. Meanwhile, on the rooftop, 𝐂𝐶𝐒 and John are attacked. 𝐂𝐶𝐒 makes marksman shots, killing some men and showcasing her skills. At the same time, John, who already knows the weak spot of the armor, which is located in the neck, expertly takes out multiple men at once. Simultaneously, Kane also gets involved in the action, and for a blind man, he beats the living hell out of his assailants by using some alarming sensors to find the exact location of his enemies. 𝐂𝐶𝐒 and John attempt to escape the building and begin killing anyone in their sights. 𝐂𝐶𝐒 showcases her exceptional fighting skills as she kills and massacres all the men mercilessly, without any hesitation that come her way. John then takes out a few henchmen, but 𝐂𝐶𝐒 is shot during the fight. Her father comes to the rescue by eliminating the shooters, but not before he picks his daughter up and tells John to go the way he came in, asking John to kill as many as you can. As John makes his way out, he is met by 4 assailants. He then easily eliminates 2 of them as he goes into combat with the remaining. After using 1,000,000 bullets on their armor, he kills them. He's then ambushed by an NBA-sized player, and John decides to rely on nunchucks. He takes on 2 of them, but at the end, he pulls out his pistols, killing them. He kills some more assailants by doing some sick moves as he swings and kills the man. He doesn't get a second of rest as Kane makes his way in. Soon, John and Kane have a fight. They just pull the trigger and begin raining a hail of bullets towards each other, but Kane manages to get the upper hand, cornering John. Suddenly, the tracker begins firing. He shoots at Kane, and this leads to John's escape. Meanwhile, the bounty for John has now been raised to $20 million, making the case more intense. As John goes outside, he's ambushed, but he manages to kill the last man, not before taking his medallion. From nowhere, a dog then springs into action and kills 2 attackers. The tracker reveals himself, which makes John more confused. To his surprise, the tracker then kills an assailant from behind John, and by looking at his phone, he tells him that he wants more money, as the bounty is not enough, and lets him flee. Meanwhile, 𝐂𝐶𝐒 and her father are trying to escape the hotel but are found by Kane. He tells them to give John's whereabouts and leave. However, 𝐂𝐒𝐒 decides to protect his friend John and takes out his sword. As they begin fighting, Kane easily overpowers 𝐂𝐒𝐒 and gains the upper hand in the fight, stabbing 𝐂𝐒𝐒 multiple times. Witnessing this, 𝐂𝐶𝐒 runs towards her dying father, and Kane shows mercy on her, letting her escape with revenge in her eyes. Later on, John finds himself in the subway station and finds 𝐂𝐶𝐒 there as well. She blames John for all this chaos and tells him he must kill Kane, or she will. Back in New York, at the Hotel Continental, Winston is visited by the Bowery King and tells him he needs to speak to John. He replies that it didn't turn out well for him last time. The scene shifts to the tracker who was having a meeting with Marquis, where he informs him that he can find John for an amount of $25 million. As they negotiate, all of a sudden, Marquis stabs his hand to show his dedication. The tracker pulls his hand out of the knife, and they shake hands on $23 million. Next, John pays a visit to Winston, and they meet at Sharon's memorial. Winston asks John, "Where will this end?" as he tells John that he will run out of bullets before they run out of heads. Instead, he should challenge Marquis to one-on-one combat, revealing that the members at the high table can do so, and if the challenge is presented by their family, the latter must accept. Winston then tells John to go and amend things with his family, who already have a place on the high table. John makes his way to Berlin and goes inside a church. As he walks towards the altar, the priest pulls out a shotgun and shoots at John, after which he tells him, "Nice suit." The scene then shifts to Marquis' luxurious mansion as he gets on the phone with the tracker, where he informs him that John is in Berlin and demands his fee. However, Marquis says, "The deal was for your service," and reveals that either John dies or he does. Inside the church, John's family starts torturing him as 𝐇𝐄'𝐒 tells him that he ruined everything and that his father died because of him. She reveals she intends to kill him until he mentions the one-on-one duel. However, 𝐇𝐄𝐒 tells John that if he kills the man who murdered their father, she will mend his ticket, and he can again become part of the family, to which John says he needs a way in, and she sends Klaus to help him, who hits him hard. The scene cuts to a nightclub, where Klaus takes John, restrained, to a kingpin named 𝐇𝐄'𝐒, who laughs as he reads the letter. To John's surprise, Kane also walks in, and 𝐇𝐄'E reveals that he has been set up by his family, who gave him up to save themselves. Tension rises as 𝐇𝐄'E aims his gun at John. In response, Kane also aims his gun at him. Surprisingly, the tracker also joins the party. All three men want to be the one who kills John, and so they play a game of cards to decide. As the game takes place, 𝐇𝐄'E is somehow able to draw a 5 of a kind. John immediately slices him, and everyone starts attacking each other, along with the dog. Shots are fired, and several lives are taken in an instant. 𝐇𝐄'E runs for his life, and John makes his way inside the club, showing his dedication. He begins to eliminate every adversary coming his way. He finds the kingpin, and they begin hand-to-hand combat. 𝐇𝐄'E overpowers John, throwing him around, not before dragging him with his tie. The fight continues as 𝐇𝐄'E lands a brutal kick, which makes John fall off the building, leaving him disoriented. Getting back up, he immediately faces hostility from 4 assailants. John mercilessly eliminates them using their weapons one by one. However, he's then attacked again by 𝐇𝐄'E, and they exchange a few punches. John puts him on the ground, but not for long, as 𝐇𝐄'E gets up and makes a run for his life. But John throws an axe at him and throws him off the stairs, resulting in 𝐇𝐄'E breaking his neck and killing him instantly. He punches him and takes his tooth out as evidence. He then makes his way back to the church, submitting the tooth to 𝐷𝐄𝐄, after which his family accepts him back. To do so, they initiate a ritual, engraving his hand along with 𝐷𝐄𝐄's with the family's crest, and welcome him back to the family once and for all. The scene goes back to New York. Winston walks into a room, paying a visit to Marquis. He's surprised to see Winston. He hands him the notice for a duel, highlighting to settle things the old-fashioned way, as gentlemen should. The terms for John's victory are his freedom and being free from all obligation to the table, as well as for Winston, his title, along with his hotel, will all be restored and rebuilt at the high table's expense. However, the Marquis tells him that Winston is the second, and hence he either walks away a champion or accompanies him to the grave, after which, the scene shifts to John, who immediately visits a table where he sits opposite Marquis. They flip cards to decide the location, time, and weapon for the upcoming confrontation. The duel will be at sunrise with pistols at Sacred Coeur, but Marquis demands a nomination to substitute himself for Kane. However, the Harbinger reveals that failing to appear at sunrise will result in immediate execution. As John leaves with Winston, Kane says he won't fight. However, Marquis tells him that if he wins, he and his daughter are freed, and no one can touch him. But if he doesn't, she would have to face the consequences. The scene then shifts to John, where he makes his way back to the church and meets with Kane. There, they have a friendly chat over their loved ones. Kane tells John that he is a dear friend, but if it is between him and his daughter, it has to be him. After which, John departs. Later, John heads down to an abandoned station where he meets the Bowery King along with Winston. He hands him a nice suit and tells him he must look his best if he's getting married or buried. Elsewhere, Marquis goes to his concierge and says to him, "I have a feeling Mr. Wick will never make it to the duel by sunrise." His concierge understands and goes in search of him. Meanwhile, the contract for Wick has now changed to find and destroy and has been scaled to a massive $26 million. On the radio, everyone in the city is alerted to kill John Wick as he is a thorn in their paradise. Many different crews get locked and loaded as they prepare to destroy the city to find Mr. Wick. At the station, John asks the Bowery King for a gun. He then gives him a 9mm Pit Viper pistol that has a 21 mag capacity and about a million other technical benefits. John is impressed and asks, "How close can you get me to the church?" They take him on a luxurious boat ride, where Winston reveals what to put on Sheeran's gravestone and decides to put, "a friend." Soon, the king says that's as far as they can go. As John departs, he says, "A loving husband. This should be on my gravestone." As John exits, the radio station is immediately alerted to his location. He is then surrounded by many men as they come from all directions. The fighting begins, and as he takes out the first two, he is hit by a car. He then eliminates the driver and is rammed by another car. Once again, he takes care of him and loves the idea of ramming people with a car. He utilizes the car as cover while killing a few more men and takes off as his location is updated on the radio. Soon, an army of mercenaries makes their way toward him. He then puts his car in reverse and eliminates the driver. Next, he starts to do a donut and skillfully takes care of the men in the middle of the road. However, his vehicle is then slammed and flipped over. John gets out and is ready for war. He expertly takes out 1, 2, 3, but the fourth engages him in a close-quarter combat. He quickly subdues him as well. The concierge of Marquis runs after John, and they shoot in between cars coming their way. They go into a fistfight for a while, and he throws John onto an oncoming van. They continue fighting until he himself is thrown onto an incoming vehicle. John picks up his gun and starts running as it becomes chaotic. A hail of bullets is fired at will, and people get hit by cars indiscriminately. John tries to get off the road until shots are fired at him. He makes his way back into the traffic. Adding to the difficulty, the tracker arrives on the scene. He gets locked and loaded and is just running around, killing anything that moves, assisting John. John finds a bike and jumps on it and makes a run for his life as they chase him and get him cornered. John then does a sick move, and he makes his way inside a building where he can give himself the advantage. He starts eliminating his attackers one by one until he has pretty much screwed everyone up. Meanwhile, the tracker then gets a call from Marquis, and the tracker demands $35 million for John Wick and ends the phone call, enraging Marquis. He then starts killing his rivals so that he can claim the prize for himself. Marquis then calls him back, and the tracker now wants $40 million, to which Marquis agrees, and everyone is alerted to the prize money increase. John remains in the building and kills off 2 assailants as he uses a custom-made rifle, killing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and so on. In the next 10 seconds, he takes out like 20 goons. On the other hand, the tracker is also shooting at Will until they start fighting each other. They get into a fistfight, and John gets him at gunpoint as the concierge is aiming his gun at the tracker's dog. Instead of saving himself, John decides to save the dog, and the tracker immediately realizes that John is one honorable man. John jumps out of the building and looks at his watch, as it is about to sunrise, but his location is announced once again. He has a good stare down with his attackers until he starts ramming his trigger, just like a video game with levels. He has to take out a few as he ascends the stairs. As he moves, he kills and kills and kills some more until he reaches the top. However, he is then thrown down, falling the first flight of stairs, until he is beaten and kicked down to the bottom of all the stairs. Seeing his watch, John realizes there are 3 minutes to go. As he is losing all hope, suddenly Kane arrives and tells him to start climbing. He helps him up, and they start fighting their way to the top. Kane and John prove to be a deadly combo as they easily take out many assailants, making their way to the top. As the concierge once again faces John, this time he has had enough and gets him onto the ground. He walks towards him with his pistol, and as John is about to die, the tracker is there and looks at his dog. He decides to save John's life by shooting the concierge, after which Kane appears and stabs the man's hand with a pencil, subduing him. As Kane and John walk off, the tracker looks before the man who tries to hurt his puppy. He kills him, and his dog pees on his head for payback. John just makes it on time, just before the sunrise. The tracker, along with his dog, takes a seat to enjoy the show. The 2 men then take off their vests, after which they are handed a pistol each and are ordered to take their positions. Kane tells him, "See you in the next life," and they take 30 paces away from each other. They are handed a bullet, not before Kane tells Marquis to shut up. Meanwhile, Winston and John enjoy the sunrise as John asks for any of Winston's last words, to which he tells him to have fun out there. Next, the Harbinger asks if both men are ready. When they agree, he says, "Fire." Kane is hit in the shoulder, and that's it. After which, they come closer to each other and reload their pistols. He says, "Fire again." Kane gets hit in the stomach area, and John takes one in his shoulder. After looking at each other for a while, they are then commanded to step closer as they reload once again. As some sad music starts to play, both knowing that one must die, everyone just stops and stares at each other, awaiting the call. "Fire" is shouted again, and John is on the ground, bleeding out, as Winston looks at him with concern. Witnessing this, the tracker gets emotional, as well. Marquis grabs the last bullet and walks to Kane to grab his gun. Kane asks if his daughter is free, and Marquis says, yes. He walks towards John while loads the bullet into the gun, aiming it at him. However, Winston interjects, calling him an arrogant fool, and tells him that John didn't shoot. He looks at him, but John pulls the trigger and gets a headshot. Witnessing such, the tracker laughs, and the Harbinger tells John his obligations are now satisfied, and he is a free man. He also tells Kane that he and his daughter are also free. He says to Winston that he will be reinstated and the hotel will be rebuilt at the table's expense. Now, as their business is concluded, and they walk off, Kane goes to John and calls him brother. John says that Kane owes him one, insinuating that he intentionally didn't kill him. Winston and John speak, and John asks him, "Will you take me home?" Winston looks at his wound and says, "Of course." As John slowly walks towards the stairs, Winston's eyes become watery. He slowly sits down on them. While sitting alone on the stairs, John starts getting flashbacks of Helen and whispers, "That worked." Afterward, due to his injuries, he slowly collapses on the ground. Back at home, we are at a graveyard with John and Helen's graves side by side. The Bowery King, along with Winston and John's dogs, stand there. Winston is heartbroken and puts his hand on the tombstone, saying, "Goodbye, my son." After which, they walk off, and sadly, the movie comes to an end. We have a post-credits scene, which is just as sad. Kane has a bouquet of flowers and is finally walking towards his daughter with a smile on his face. We move to find Akira walking towards him and pulling out a knife as the movie comes to an end. Thanks for watching. If you have enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. See you in the next one.